Good morning, good morning. If you guys can't tell, all the kiddos, 5th grade and under, you can come get an activity bag. Not you, Miss Wendy. You're in 6th grade now. You don't get a bag anymore. No, I'm just kidding. No, hopefully they'll enjoy those. Parents, dads especially, it's your job to find the snack in that bag and take it from your child for some reason, right? Whether it's a good one or not. That was one of my favorite pastimes. We used to pack extra Cheerios and Fruit Loops for me when we brought our kids. So, hey, glad to have you guys here this morning. We're in our last Sunday, our last week of Battlegrounds. Have you guys enjoyed this series? Yeah, it's been really, really good. So we're going to try our best to ruin that today and talk about something that's really annoying to you. All right, you're welcome ahead of time. I'm just kidding. That's not the plan. We're gonna talk about something that it doesn't take very long to create some tension in. And we strategically picked this subject matter because kids are in here with us and it affects them just as much as it affects us. And so today we are going to talk about the battleground of screens or screen time. Somebody already said, woo! Hopefully you're on the right side of that, right? We'll see. No. So our whole idea, our agenda today is not to go, screens are bad, because we don't use them in our lives, right? Obviously. We have 2 screens, at least 3, 4, 5. You can count so many screens. Screens are here to stay, right? We're going to use them. We're going to have to I don't know, order food at fast food restaurants on screens nowadays, right? How many of you have walked in and somebody at the counter said, hey, we're short-staffed today. You can order on the kiosk. And I'm like, well, I don't want to order on the kiosk. I wanted to tell you about it so I didn't have to punch in on this thing over here. Screens are a part of all of our lives, right? And so here's the idea. Here's what creates the tension, right? Is there some good things about screens, and there are some not so good things about screens. And there's a way to navigate this, and me and Miss Crystal are going to do our best to try to give you some steps to walk through to help you use screens in a healthy way, right? To not let them take over. And so let's talk about why this has become something even bigger than what it used to be. This hasn't always been an issue, right? But it's growing, and it's continuing to grow. And so Miss Crystal's going to share a little bit of info with us, and we're going to dig in this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of go back a little bit. Who remembers, 15, 20 years ago when a phone had a cord on it? And the cord was attached to something on the wall. And then some of us who were teenagers, when we wanted to talk to someone and have some privacy, you had to stretch that cord around the corner and talk, right? This generation that we're raising right now, they have no idea what that was, right? We could even throw back longer and say, instead of just punching the numbers when you had to roll the dial, my grandmother had one of those. I remember playing with it. But yeah, so this is becoming an issue because it wasn't back then. Because back then, we just used our phone to call somebody. That was it. And then all of a sudden, the smartphone appeared in the year, actually, who thinks they know what year the first smartphone came about? Just shout out some answers. What do you think? 2002, 2007?
Somebody did hit it. Somebody with screen time issues knows exactly when it was.
Yeah, so the year 2007. 2007 was when the first smartphone came out. And of course, not everybody had one in the year 2007. But, back then I can remember you and I had the little flip phones, right? Mm-hmm. So not everyone had a smartphone when they came out. But in 2007, that's when this smartphone came out, and it was definitely more than just communicating with someone through the phone. So let's just do a little show of hands here, okay? So how many of you have a smartphone? Okay. How many of you have a tablet or an iPad type thing? Kids included here. Okay. All right. What about a laptop, a traveling computer? Okay. Awesome. So yeah, we can see that we're all part of this culture of having some type of screen in our possession. And so I use mine for a lot of different things. Let's just get another show of hands here. How many of you use your devices to, well, let's talk about this because this yesterday. Watch sports. Mm-hmm. Okay. Play games. All right. Watching cartoons.
Where my kids at? I know y'all are listening out there. And some adults.
Or my favorite, online shopping. Yes, absolutely.
Listen, and none of us are left out of this group. We all use screens for something, right? I know that AI is something that is not new, but it's something we're learning that is out there, and it has a good side and a bad side too, right? So just being real vulnerable, last week, my wife and I discovered that you can use ChatGPT to come up with a meal plan for your house. How many of y'all absolutely hate coming up with a meal plan at your house? Well, listen, let me give you this little nugget, and this is my admitting that we use screens, but listen to what you do. We literally typed in, make a meal plan for the next 5 days for our family of 3 with beef, chicken, and pork, and make it under 30-minute prep time, and make a grocery list according to the location of the groceries in the store. Listen, 30 seconds later, me and Crystal were rolling out to the store to go shop because everything was there. We didn't have anything to argue about. I don't like that. I don't like this. We just hated on ChatGPT while we went shopping, right? And so it worked out great for us. So there are things you shouldn't use ChatGPT for. Meal plans is not one of them. That's a good thing, right? You can do that, right? So we're all part of this culture. We're all part of being in front of a screen for some reason, whether it's work or school, right? I remember in school when we all shared time, we got to go once a week to the computer lab to sit in front of the green boxes, and we had no idea what to do when the Oregon Trail came out. I'm like, wait, we can play games on this? Terrible games, really bad games, but also more fun than school, right? And so things have changed. We're all a part of this. And so electronics themselves have come a long way, but the smartphone is an era that is just continuing to cause more and more issues if gone unchecked, right? Negative effects are showing up in physical, mental, and social health as a society. It's not limited to adults and teenagers, but even affecting our young children. And so statistics are showing the negative effects that are happening from excessive use of screens. So if you hear something this morning, this is what we want you to hear. Screens aren't necessarily bad, but excessive use of screens can be. All right? And so I want to be really, really careful not to leave you confused on what we're trying to say today. Excessive use of anything can be bad, right? Excessive use of screens causes a lot of potential problems and stuff that we can't see sometimes, right? And so we're seeing this and trying to figure out how we can keep this from having negative effects on us and our children's lives. And so the most common negative impacts given in statistics are neck and shoulder pain, sleep trouble, anxiety and depression, social isolation, relationship problems, and decreased face-to-face interactions. And so almost 70% of people who use a screen are reporting some type of negative outcome from the amount of screen use that they have. Almost 70%. And this is, again, not to make you feel bad, but this is just reality. If you haven't had any of these yet, it's coming. Or maybe you already have some really good boundaries set for your screens. Go you, right? You're not going to have some of these negative effects.
Yeah, I mean, the struggle is real. As we were digging into this and kind of looking at research and stuff, there were moments when Kyle and I were looking at each other going, whoops, that's me. We've done that. I have been on the couch on an afternoon home from work and found myself, what do they call it? Doom scrolling? I don't know. That's probably the new language. Just scrolling and scrolling. And I look up, and I have been sitting there for an hour doing this. And I don't know, Facebook at this point is just a bunch of ads. Why am I sitting here wasting my time like this? Or another thing is, instead of picking up the phone and actually calling someone, it's just easier to text. And I use the excuse of, that means they can get back to me whenever, it's convenient for them. I don't want to interrupt them. Actually, I'm just being selfish, and I want to be able to just text real quick and let it go. I am definitely a person that says, Kyle, my neck, I could use a little bit of a neck rub, my neck's bothering me.
And
really
I'm so
bad.
busy on my phone right now, I don't have time for that. So.
Right? And so, we find ourselves in this list. You're not alone. We're not standing up here saying, this is bad. This is stuff that we've researched and that we've found. And so screens are an integral part of our life. We've already talked about all the things that we can do on them and good things that we can do on them. So for us to stand up here and just tell you, do away with all of your screens, that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. We don't live in a world where we can do that. Now, listen, I know some people who literally, their phone is literally just to talk to people. That's all they use it for. And so I'm like, go you. I wish I could be at that point. But that's what we're talking about today. We're just talking about that battleground. Like, where does this lie? We got to figure out a way that we can use something that's not like bad or evil in itself, but we got to figure out where are the parts that are not good. Where's the tension lie? And so after all of our research, this is what we want you guys to hear us say. Excessive screen use keeps us from stewarding our time wisely and is quietly harming our hearts and our minds. So that's what we want you to hear today, excessive screen use. So again, smartphone, not good, bad. Screens are not bad in and of themselves, but it's really how or why we're spending our time on them. The Bible does not speak to a smartphone. I don't know about you. I've read the Bible through about 3 or 4 times now. I don't ever remember hearing it talk about a smartphone or electronic devices.
Talks about tablets.
Yes, it does.
It's
It
a
does
little
talk
different
about
scenario.
tablets. I forgot about that. I don't think the kind of tablet we're talking about. though.
Probably not.
But what it does do is it gives us some clear instructions about how to live a godly life, right? And that's what we're wanting to do. How do I honor God in my screen time use, right? How do I look at that and say, this is what the Bible is telling me about how to live life with a smartphone? That's kind of where we're trying to go today.
Absolutely. And so we've identified 2 potential danger areas, and you can make a mental note, or you can go on our app on your screen. How convenient. Y'all have no idea how hard this is. Use this screen while we're talking about how awful screens can be, right? Go on the app. There are notes there. You can fill this in. So there's 2 things that we've identified. One is excessive screen use can cause us to not steward our time wisely, and also it can impact the health of our heart and our mind. And so here's what we know. When Scripture doesn't speak boldly and clearly and says, do not do this, it's a little more difficult to adopt that principle, right? It's a little more difficult to apply that principle. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be applied, but we want you to know we see you, right? We've done some of this in our house because my wife is amazing, not because I had anything to do with it, but because she's seen some of these dangers and difficulties. We've taken some steps, and they're hard because sometimes we forget that this principle takes a little effort to apply it, right? So we're going to share with you where we see these principles of stewarding our time wisely and looking out for the health of our heart and mind. So when it comes to stewarding our time wisely, we're going to be in Ephesians 5, verse 15 through 17, and it says this very clearly: be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Also, James speaks to the importance of paying attention to time. James 4, 13 through 15 says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or do that. And so, in stewardship of time, as far as that goes, making wise decisions, right? Most of us can make a list of what is wise and what is unwise, right? If not, maybe you can gather with some friends and you guys can work that out and you can make a good list and a not so good list, right? What are wise decisions or what are foolish decisions? And so what it's saying here is making the most of every opportunity. Right? In order to make the most of every opportunity, we have to make wise decisions. And so what we're saying to you today, when it comes to your screen, your phone, your device, whatever it is, the amount of time that you're spending on a screen, you've got to make a wise decision, because a wise decision will allow you to make the most of every opportunity. How many of you guys would say with confidence that every time you're in front of a screen, you are making the most of that time? Good. None of you are liars today. I'm proud of all of you. Okay, there's one person in the back who just had to do it because nobody else raised their hand, right? Most of us at some point, and I'm not trying to beat up on any of us, most of us are not really using our time wisely. And hear me, that doesn't mean if you're not, building a house for someone or providing water for somebody that doesn't have water, if you're not on mission all the time, then you're failing at being wise. That is not what I'm saying. But there are better things we can do than spend multiple hours in front of a screen, right? We can make some better decisions. There are also some good things we can do. We can learn on our screen, right? We can gain information from screen and in front of a screen that is good, that leads us to make a wise decision. And if that's what you're doing, okay, I see you, like that counts. That's okay, all right? James also speaks to making plans. Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there, and it says, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. If you're anything like me, when you're spending that time on the couch and you're in front of that phone, there's about 3 or 4 more things that are toward the kitchen that you probably know you should be doing, but you're thinking, well, maybe I'll just do that later. Right now, I'm going to do this, right? This is where I get caught. I've got time. I've got time to do that. I've got time to fix this. I've got time to go and spend with my kiddo later. I can lean into that later on. I'm just tired right now. I don't have the brain capacity to deal with this issue right now. I'm going to do it later. And James is saying, you don't know. You don't know what kind of time you have. What about the time right now that you're spending on the things you don't need to spend the time on, right? And so we have this information that allows us to process. Are we doing well with the time that we have? Are we making good choices? And so we need to ask some questions, right? Is this time, is what I'm doing, is it taking up time that I could be investing in my spouse or my children? Or could I be praying, or could I be studying the Bible, right? And again, I'm not telling you, man, if you're not constantly praying all the time and always reading your Bible, like, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Like, that's not what we're saying. We have to function. There are other things that need to be done. But could I be creating new habits? Could I be making an effort to break some old habits? Could I be connecting with my children? Could I be repairing the squeaky door? How many of y'all got a squeaky door? Don't raise your hand, because then your wife will know. Say, don't do that, right? Now, all these young girls raise their hand. Y'all ain't got no squeaky door. Could I be shepherding my family, right? Are there things that I could be doing? And we're not trying to just create busy work. We're not just trying to say, throw your phone away and stay busy for the rest of your life. But there are other things that you need to look at in order to make a wise decision about the time that you have, because the truth is, we really don't have control of what's next, right? We need to make good decisions with the time that we have now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, one of the studies that we found when we were doing our research, I think it was Harmony Health, in the year January 2025, they had accumulated this information, and they said that the average person spends 5 hours and 16 minutes a day on their phone. And that's their phone. And then it said screen time. So screen time encompasses computers, devices, TV, your phone, obviously, all of that. So all the screen time, the average person spends 16 hours a day in front of a screen. That's our children too. Our children, obviously, they use computers in school. It's helping them to find information, so it's not a bad thing. But if you just take that information alone and think about how much time we're spending in front of screens, it lets us know how much time screens are consuming us. So that's just, some more information for us to look at. So we talked about time. Now let's talk about the impact on our heart and our mind. This was some of the research that I had heard in passing when you're scrolling and you see them talking about screen time. It talks about how the time that we spend on it is a big deal, but even more so is the desire we have to spend on a screen. It's these comments of being addicted to our phones. And for me, I'm like, I am not addicted to my phone. Like, I can put my phone down. I fasted it in our church fast. I fasted that for 21 days. It wasn't a problem. I don't know. We have to think through that. So there's research that talks about all this time that we spend, but then there's also research that's talking about the problem is that we're all becoming addicted to our phones. I've done this before. Realized I left my phone at the house when I went to go do something. How many of you have had that panic? Oh my gosh, I left my phone. It has my grocery list on it, right? Because who writes their grocery list much anymore? Because
I don't. I use ChatGPT.
So yeah, I mean, we've had this moment where we're realizing the effect that our phones are having in not just our time, but our desire of needing it. And so something that I found is that saying that the influence that our phones are having on what we consume through our screens is changing our attitudes and our actions. So let me kind of walk through that. This is how addiction kind of works. And what happens is we receive something that we like, or we like how it makes us feel. And so that's called dopamine. And the dopamine then goes to the pleasure center of our brain. So everything, anytime we have something that happens that we like, we receive that hit of dopamine. And when we're on our screens specifically, because we can just scroll, what happens is that we see something we like and it's a hit of dopamine. I receive a Snapchat dopamine. I get a notification dopamine. And so it just keeps going on and on because we have these screens with us all of the time. And so our bodies are kind of almost in a constant state of receiving this dopamine to our pleasure centers. And what happens is we start wearing that pleasure center out. Right? If I'm gonna go and I'm going to do extraneous exercise, it's going to wear me out eventually. And so that's what's happening in our brain. And then our body begins to react. And it's talking about how it reacts. It reacts and gives us the risk for anxiety and depression. That was one of our negative effects, impacts. They're seeing for children specifically more ADD, ADH symptoms coming out of that. And so this is not healthy for adults or teenagers, but especially our children, because their brains are developing and they are learning. As they're learning to rewire their brain and adapt to things that they're learning, which is great for when they're learning things. But what's happening is now it's beginning to teach their body to crave those kinds of things. That's addiction, folks. And for me, it was a big gut punch when I sat there and I read that. And I thought, oh my gosh, not just for me, myself, but for my children. And so our teens and our young children, because these screens are so easily accessible and easy for us as parents to just hand them to keep them busy, not in a bad way, but I'm trying to check out at the grocery store, or I'm trying to have a conversation, or we're sitting down for dinner with another, couple, so I'm going to hand them a screen. I'm not maliciously doing that, but what's happening is our kids are consuming all of this, and it's leading to feelings of isolation, depression, and they're beginning to see these symptoms come out. And so these are negatively affecting their moods, and they're causing all of these symptoms of stress and anxiety and depression. And something I read, that just really hit me. It says, what fills your screens fills your souls. Ow. What fills your screens fills your souls. And so we've got to look at the screens as what can we do with our screens for it to not negatively impact, but for me to use it correctly. And it's funny because last week we talked about boundaries in relationships. And today we're going to talk about boundaries again. We're going to talk about what kind of boundaries do we need with our screens, because as we can see, statistics are showing us that there needs to be some boundaries.
And for some of us, boundaries look like getting your friend to purchase a safe and put your screens in it and not tell you what the combination is, right? That may be the only solution, or that may be what it feels like. And so we understand that making the change from all screens all the time to just stopping altogether, we get that that's difficult. It's if you want to create the most total ridiculous amount of chaos in your home, go home this afternoon and be like, all right, kids, I'm convicted. This is all true. I can see issues with you and you. I can see struggles that I'm having. Give me all your screens. We're throwing them in the trash right now. Go ahead. Video that if you don't mind with something, not a screen, right? Right? I'd love to see what happens, right? So it's going to be chaos in your home. And so we get that. If this is what has been, if this has been we have this going on, so we're going to watch screen, we're going to take time here, go watch this while I go finish this. If that's been the rhythm, just stopping that, it's not a good idea, right? It's much like you said earlier, addiction, right? You need to be weaned off of it. And some of you will hear, oh, I don't have to start today. That sounds great. That is not what I said. Right? Start today. Don't also finish today, right? This needs to be a process. And so if we're going to make the change without creating total chaos in the process, we have to know what to change to. We have to know what are the things that I should think? What are the things that I should focus on? And Philippians 4:8 tells us this: finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Somebody rolled your eyes when I started reading this because you're like, I've heard this before. This wasn't profound and mind-boggling like I wanted it to be. So you're telling me all I have to do is focus on godly things. All I have to do is pursue Jesus. All I have to do is follow him instead of using that screen to make me feel better. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're using your screen to comfort you, if you're using your screen to redirect you instead of dealing with what God calls us to deal with, right? You know that God calls us to step into hard things and to trust him to walk us through it. This is one of those too, right? How many times are you standing quietly and you don't know what to do next and your knee jerk is to reach in your pocket and grab your phone? How many of you guys have ever had the vibrating leg when you don't even have your phone in your pocket and you're like, oh, somebody just texted me. Oh, wait, my phone's not in there, right? Our body has adjusted, right? Or your watch, right? I haven't worn an Apple Watch in months, and I still look at my not Apple Watch to see if there's a text on there, right? We are conditioning our bodies to respond to our screens. And while they're not all bad, we have allowed them to become something that they were never meant to be. They're beginning to take the place that Christ should have in our lives, where we should run to him when we're struggling. We should run to him when we're stressed. We should run to him when we can't think of what we should do next, right? So our knee jerk is to go to a screen instead of to go to Christ. And so if we are focused on what is true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable, we're switching from the easy thing that we've worked ourselves into just jumping into without thinking, right? That we've become addicted to. And we're switching over to this new habit, this right habit of following God. And so don't go home and destroy all your screens. Create some boundaries. And so we want to talk for just a minute what those boundaries look like, what those steps can look like.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, we said stewarding time and the impact on our heart and mind. So let's talk about stewarding time first, okay? So what this can look like is setting time limits. So, those of us that have social media apps, the Facebook, the TikTok, the the Snapchat, whatever it is that's consuming your time, beginning to set time limits on it. And this is something I did when I came back out of my fast. I set a time limit. They said the average person spends 5 hours and 16 minutes on their phone. And so for me, I started off with 3. All right, I'm going to do 3 hours a day. And then I've moved it back a little bit at a time. And what you're going to notice is you didn't realize how often you went to that. And it's going to say, time is up. And you're going to go, I cannot believe I was on it that long. That doesn't feel like I was on it that long. So setting time limits. This is the same thing for your kids. Setting a time limit on their device, their little tablet or whatever that is, and talking to them about it. Don't just do it, but have the conversation with them. Making no phone zones. So we don't have electronics at our dinner table. Our kids and ourselves are not allowed to have electronics at the dinner table. We're not going to have anything that interrupts us. There's not going to be a zzz vibrating on the table. We're not going to have those there. And maybe for your kids, they don't get to have their device in their bedroom. Maybe they have to use it out where you are so that you can monitor and you can hear. So just setting places where you say, you know what, we're not going to use screens in this area or at this time. And then another one is just taking a digital break. So, that's what I fasted from. So I took a digital break. I didn't use my phone for any social media for a certain amount of time. But maybe for you, it's just like one day a week that you say, I'm not going to use screens. And the ones that are around you the most, they're going to know, hey, that's going to be a day that they're not on there. So just think about what it looks like for those things to steward your time. So setting time limits, making no phone zones, and then just taking an actual break. The other thing is, especially for your kiddos, you're thinking to yourself, what in the heck are they going to do when they don't have their screen time? So kiddos, stand up right where you are for a second. I just want you to stand right where you are. And I want you to tell me, what are some things, if your electronic goes dead, the battery's dead, you can't use it anymore, tell me some things that you would do if you couldn't play on your electronic. Just go ahead and shout them out. Play outside, color, paint, sleep. Oh,
Well,
amen, right?
There's
yes.
my spirit
All right,
animal.
good job. So So listen, that's what we did this summer when we had no electronic days. We made a list. We made a list of all the things that we could do when we weren't on our electronic, whether that was coloring or crafting or baking or playing outside, whatever. We made a list. And so whenever we weren't able to have our screen time that day, we were like, okay, let's just go to our list. What's something we can do, right? And we had a place to go and look at, because that's the hardest part, right, is replacing it with something.
All right, this wasn't on here, but all right, parents, are you ready? What would you do if your smartphone didn't exist, if the TV wasn't working, right? What is the thing on your list that if you had enough of a reason, you would do that instead of getting caught up in your phone or in your screen? And listen, say it out loud so your kids can hear. Work out. Amen.
Exercise.
Read. Come on, that's like 2 people.
Sleep. We got sleep too.
Some of them are the same. Sleep. Eat a snack.
Did you clean the house?
Clean the house, right? Listen, we all are kind of secretly, not so secretly trapped by the same things,
Yep.
right? Most of us, once we get on our phone, we start feeling kind of good and we ignore the thing. But if we really could pick, like how many of us, and I don't want you to raise your hand, but I know I'm one of these people. I will be heading home from work going, this afternoon I'm going to read. I'm going to sit down and read for 30 minutes. I want to read. I want to get into it. Maybe I can go sit on the porch and do that. Whatever. I'm going to do that. That's exactly what I'm going to do. By the time I haul stuff upstairs and get to the top of the stairs and look around at the things that need to be done, I'm like, I'm going to take a break real quick before I get started. And my 30 minutes winds up in the corner of the couch with all my pillows just right and the fan turning and the cool air. It's a whole issue, y'all. With my phone in my hand, right? And before long, it's Crystal's walking around because she's more disciplined than I am. She's doing all the things. And I'm like, why don't you sit down and quit making me feel guilty right now? Like, come sit beside me with your phone. Don't you want to look? Let me show you this video. Can I suck you into this, right? Maybe that's not all intentional.
So
right?
what we're saying is that it can be done. You can steward your time. You can make some differences. So now let's talk about the healthy habits for our heart and our mind. One of the things that I've started this year was that on my Instagram, I have began to follow positive accounts. People who are speaking truth. People who are helping to share things that they've seen from the Bible or things that they're learning to do with their life. And so my accounts don't have just all this junk anymore. I'm able to see and to hear. And what I'm hearing is good things for me. So looking at changing the kind of accounts that you follow. And then another one is just engaging in hobbies. Our daughter started some sports this year, and so now it's like, you know what? I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to, practice and play with her. And I, believe it or not, my body feels better in the afternoon when I've gone and I've exercised and I've done stuff like that. So just choosing to do an activity or a hobby or a project instead of following mindlessly on my phone.
And some other things we can do is connecting with people face to face, making an effort to schedule a dinner or just a phone call, right? Some of us need to catch up with our extended family. Some of us don't want to, but some of us need to, right? We can make that phone call and then put your phone down and run away. Because if you're anything like me, you'll do something that's good on the phone, and before you know it, you've flipped over to your favorite app and you're on it for the next 7 days, whatever it is. You can choose content that makes you think, that makes you learn and grow. That's kind of the same as looking up those inspiring things to look at. Did you know that most of your apps have a place where you can delete the things you don't want to see, right? If you're going to be on your phone, you might as well clean that thing up, right? Take the stuff off that you don't really want to see. That stuff that you scroll past and go, ugh. Hit the X, delete it, where it doesn't continue to pop up so often. I don't know if a lot of you guys have noticed, but things will jump on your feed that you didn't ask to be there. If it doesn't have the name of a person that you were friends with at the top of it, delete it. Get rid of it. Quit letting it decide what the content is that you see, right? We can model healthy habits and have open conversations about expectations with our children or our teenagers, right? These are not easy conversations. Your teenagers are not going to like this. They're going to think that today at church was stupid, all right? We know that. That's why it's our job as adults to go, we know it's stupid. We're going to do it anyway because we're stupid too, right? However you need to say that, engage in these conversations. Explain that I'm responsible for your brain. I'm responsible for your life. I'm responsible for your ability to make decisions. So I'm going to double down on it because I'm crazy. Right? It's okay to be a crazy parent. We could talk about that later on too. I got a book coming out.
There's even more research. We could go on and on about this, so you guys do your own research. But it talked about the percentage of teenagers who actually wish that they didn't have a phone because of pressures that come with it. Right? These apps too, like the Snapchats, creating streaks and all this stuff, like it's putting pressure on them. So modeling these healthy, habits and then talking to them about what they're feeling through it. Like it's all a big deal. So
and listen, while we understand that there are teenagers who are that way, we have my older son told us one time, hey, whenever Aubrey gets old enough, she doesn't need Snapchat at all. Like that's just a bad thing. I'm like, all right, cool. So are you going to delete it? He goes, no, absolutely not. So there's the tension, right? There's that battleground, that difficulty of, but I can't not have it, but I see that there's some stuff in it that's not good. She doesn't ever need to start. But once you start, you can't not have it because there are expectations that come with it, right? It doesn't take long to get in a bad place. And so here's what we know. We know that screens are not the enemy, but without boundaries, they steal our time and shape our hearts. I'm going to read that again. We know that screens are not the enemy, but without boundaries, they steal our time and shape our hearts. And so what we've learned through all our studying is that there are at least three things that we need to do. One is set boundaries, right? We know what those look like. We've given you some options and some ideas. It's up to you now. We're transferring that over to you to just take one of those and start today. Just spend less time. Right? Maybe charge your device in a different place so it's not so easily grabbed, right? The second is make intentional choices. When you're using it, when you're watching it, when you're experiencing a device, a screen, make sure you know what's coming. And if it's something that you don't want or that you shouldn't have in your head or in your mind, then turn it off and walk away, right? Make intentional choices. And then focus on what God values the most. I know for some of us when we hear that, but what God values the most, it kind of is a little boring. Listen, I know there have been a lot of Christian series that come out that just really need some help, right? They're just not done very well, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying all you can watch is the Angel channel, right? It's okay to watch other things. Be aware of what it's doing to you. Right? Most series, by the way, when they get to about season 3, they're stretching anyway, and they're all terrible, right? Move on to something different, right? Focus on what God values in your life. Fill your life with those things, and it will absolutely change your experience with screens and the amount of time that you spend on them. So, set boundaries, make intentional choices, and focus on what God values the most. And listen, if you need any help, we're here. We would love to be the mean parent to your children, but let me tell you what doesn't work. Us being the mean parent to your children, right? Us being the one that tells you what to do, that says, hey, this will work, you've got to do it. You've got to make the decision, and you guys have got to be the ones to implement it in your home that makes the actual change. And know that we're praying for you. We know that this is difficult, but it can also be absolutely life-changing for you personally, for your kids now, and for your kids in the future, and for their kids in the future, if they can grasp the idea of setting boundaries, making intentional choices, and focusing on what God values most. It can absolutely change the trajectory of where your family's headed. So, if you don't feel like it so far in this message, we love you. We really, really love you, and we know this is difficult. We want to be here to help, and we believe that you guys can take some of these steps, and we know that it's going to change your life. So let's pray as you guys enter into this battleground with these difficult conversations. God, we love you. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for the opportunity to, God, just talk about something that is very much alive in our world, and screens, devices, and all the content that we process. God, it's too much for us to be able to process, and yet we try to, God. Help us make better decisions with our screens, with our devices. God, help us to see what boundaries we need to set for us and our family. Help us to stop and take a breath, pause, and make an intentional choice about what we're consuming. And then, God, help us always always to focus on what you value most, but specifically in this area with screens, God. Help us to make better choices there, God, and compare what we're taking in versus what you want us to take in. God, we love you, and God, we just ask that you step into this with us and help to lead us and guide us, and God, just help us to go with courage and know that we've got access to your strength, God, and your perseverance through all of this. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Thank you.